revealing. It's incredibly revealing. And so you start to learn a lot about how the institutions work. You start to learn a lot about how the media is working alongside the institutions to manipulate the markets. I mean, it's not like it's not unlike everything else, you know. If the media wants you to believe something, they're going to force feed it down your throat until you believe it. You know, it's just and if you're ignorant to how the market works, you're going to be ignorant to the manipulation. It's just like if you're ignorant to how the world works and how language can be used to manipulate people. If you're ignorant to those things, you're going to be the victim to it. I don't know if did you guys get a chance to read the article that I posted in the Aruja report? Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Put your hands up in the air. Some of you. Well, in the article, I was talking about how I reached out to this author. This author wrote a book. I won't go into details on who this person is because I don't know. I just don't want to get them upset in case this ends up going public. But and I don't want to discredit them because everybody is who they are. But I just found it so shocking. You know, there's this author that writes these books about critical thinking and logical thinking. And, you know, when you pick up a book, the first thing you have to do is recognize, you know, that the author has an agenda towards writing the book. Why would an author write a book, a nonfiction book? Okay, it's because they're collecting information, they're putting it together, but they're trying to present it in a way to make you feel a certain way or to make you believe a certain thing. Period. That's the reason why, right? So when you read the book, you have to first say, where's this information coming from? Who's the author? And are they credible or not credible? How do you determine if somebody is credible or not? You look at their past work. You look at what they say. You look at whether or not what they said was true or not true. Is it something that you can validate? Is it something you could research yourself? You know, you don't just take somebody's word for it. You don't just take somebody says it's something. Like, what do we do in these classes all the time? I have the video lessons. I post them and I say, these are the video lessons. What are these video lessons? They are an accumulation of knowledge that has taken me thousands of hours of hard work and study to extract from the market. And this is what I know to be true. And I see it consistently. But what do I tell you? I don't say, here's the rules, accept it, and just, you know, trade based on that and do your analysis based on it. I say, I'm giving you the information, but number one, you're not going to know this information unless you apply it. Number two, you have to see it for yourself to believe it. Don't just believe because I said it. That's the wrong thing to do. You have to see it for yourself. And so, what better way to prove it than to go and take you by the hand and take you through the markets at random locations in historical charts going back to the 70s and 80s, and let's examine it piece by piece. And let's see whether or not the rules are legit or not. And let's analyze together and discover how we can determine if the rules are legit or not. Because, you know, if I was making up stuff on the fly, you'd realize that there's no consistency in what's being done. But if I'm sharing with you how you should be thinking and how I'm thinking and how I've been able to extract information from the markets by applying the rules, and then knowing when to bend the rules, when there's little nuances to the rules, and when we apply them, when we don't, we can do enough classes for you to see there's consistency in what we do. Why is that? Because it's real. That's why. When something's real, there's consistency. You can apply it many times to random situations. This is not a controlled situation where I'm looking at a chart and we're only doing homework on a specific part of the chart that suits my purposes or suits an agenda that I have. That's not what we're doing here. We can pick any chart, any time frame, anywhere in the in the historical portion of the chart. We can go back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It makes no difference. Any chart, any time, anywhere, we examine it and we can still extract the real information out of the chart. Why? Because what we're doing is real. Okay. So I see this author who writes about how, you pick up a book and you have to examine the credibility of the author, and this is how you extract the truth out of any material. I highly agree with that. Why? Because this is the same methodology I've used to extract the truth out of the charts. But what really shocked me was I stumbled across this person's social media, and I saw a picture, and I won't go into details on what the picture was, but the picture basically showed me that this person's um, analytical and logical skills were not being applied to what this person was showing in the picture, which made me realize that you could be an author writing books about critical thinking and logic, but if you're too afraid to examine your own core beliefs, you are going to blind yourself to the realities of the world. You know, it's just like if you are too stuck on, you know, that the institutions, it's no way that the institutions are manipulating price action, or there's no way that Fibonacci retracements don't work. If you hold on to those beliefs, even though they're based in something that you cannot logically argue and see consistently that it is what it is, that there is truth in it. If you can't do that, if you're going to stick to those false beliefs, it's going to hinder you. It's going to hinder your performance. I mean, think about it. You have to examine why those beliefs even exist, right? That's one of the most important things. Why do those beliefs even exist? Why do you think, you know, you turn on the TV and 98% of the sitcoms on there, the parents are middle class, always bitching about them not able to pay their bills and that type of dynamic? Why do you think that is like that? You think it's because they want to foster your mind into believing that you can be successful financially? Then you come to the markets and you try to outsmart the markets. You try to program your brain to think in such a way that will actually lead to your success. And guess what? Because of that programming, you're going to revert back to not thinking successfully. And subconsciously, your brain will sabotage you. So that plays a big role in it. And, so when I saw this, I was just really disappointed. And I reached out to this person and I said, listen, I have to say, I'm very surprised to see this picture that you posted. I've read your books, and you write books about logical thinking and critical thinking, and yet you posted this picture, which just basically tells me you're not really applying logical thinking or critical thinking. And so this person wrote back to me and said, well, I'm surprised you don't think the way that I do, because that's just the common belief that most people have. And so there's the problem right there. There's a problem right there. People sometimes are just so comfortable with thinking what they believe or believing what they believe because most people believe the same thing. And God forbid you be a person that thinks differently than other people. You know, Society kind of pushes away people who are different from themselves, right? And so that's an issue. That's an issue because people don't want to be pushed to the side, so they want to just go along with what everybody else thinks. Well, if you do that, then if you're comfortable with that, fine. But if you want to just achieve what everybody else has, then copy them. If you want to be greater, then you have to create your own paths and be able to think outside of that realm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I was completely shocked, and it had to do with it has to do with what's happening in the world today, and it has to do with health and wellness and the very nature of our bodies, our immune system has a lot to do with a lot of things. And the funny thing is that this author, when I looked at their Twitter profile, guess what? They're writing a book about health and how we look at what makes us sick. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's interesting. You see how that works? This author is going to write a book about health and illness and how we look at what makes us sick. And this person is showing me nothing but the fact that they don't even understand what makes us sick. So you got to be extremely careful. Just because somebody is proficient at one thing, it doesn't mean they're proficient at other things. See, I'm the type of person, I don't give a shit. I don't care about what society thinks. I don't care about following society's rules. All right? I don't. If the vast majority of people think a certain way, I tend to want to think another way because I've learned the vast majority of people are typically wrong. Okay. So I don't care about being ostracized. I've never cared about that. I don't care about being different. I enjoy being different. So, so yeah, you just got to be careful with who you listen to. I mean, you could have respect for somebody because they write books about logical thinking, but then you come across a situation where this person's not capable of thinking logically because they're blinded by their beliefs. And that's just very sad. So anyways, I thought that was just interesting and just so like, ah, it just really got to me because I couldn't believe this person was uh, was posting this picture, and it was just like, wow, man, I had more respect for you than that. But hey, we all are on our own paths. So the interesting thing is, um, so this person, we were going back and forth, and they said they wanted me to argue my argument with them. I said, listen, I don't have the time to argue my argument with you because if I sat down with you and we had a cup of coffee and you gave me 1 hour, I would make you see things completely different or at least give you a couple things to think about, instead of being so sure of yourself and so sure of what you believe, maybe I'd get you something to think differently than what it is you believe. So I just sent her a link from a very credible source that I vetted many times. I've vetted, meaning just because they're a credible source, I don't just blindly believe what I'm reading from them. I look into it myself and see the legitimacy of what this organization is saying. And when you see consistency, just like you see consistency in the work that we're doing here, when you see consistency, when you see under random situations, okay, random situations, like I said, we can go to any chart, any time, any currency pair, doesn't make a difference. You guys could throw it at me randomly, and we'd still see consistency in the rules, in the way of thinking, in the nuances, everything you'd see consistency. So if you take if you take an organization who preaches a certain thing and they say, they're painting this picture of what they're preaching, and it makes complete sense in how they're explaining it. You'd have to take that information and live life 5, 10 years and be thrown very random situations and apply what this institution taught you to these random situations. And if you're not able to see consistent results in the conclusions, then what that person was telling you or preaching to you, there's something wrong with it. Okay. And that's how you break down what's real, what's not real. So I sent this author this link and I said, listen, if you want to think outside the box and you want to understand why I was reaching out to you, read what's on this link. And that's it. And make up your own mind on what you want to feel about it. So I never heard back from them again. So it's either they read it and they're like, "Oh my God, my life is a sham," or, or "Oh my God, I have to rewrite this book that I've already written 6 chapters of because what I'm writing just is not true. It may sound like it's true, but it's not going to hold the test of time." But anyways, I wanted to share that with you because you got to be careful. You got to be careful. Things can look so great, but if it doesn't hold, if it doesn't hold through random studies, random situations, it's not true. Period. Okay? That's how it works. So, okay, so yeah, we have that demand zone there that comes across because it took out highs. I forgot to draw that in. Looks like also there's something here going on. Okay, take a look here. Okay, you think that's by chance? No, it's not by chance. Okay, algorithms, ladies and gentlemen, algorithms, right? You see this green line coming across here? That was the previous all-time highs. You see how price came, algorithm took it out, the all-time highs. What do you think was being created here? Demand. And then they took price higher. Okay? It's the same thing. It's over and over again. I mean, you've seen it yourself. So, is there a demand on this time frame? Um, I think there's an argument to be had about that. You know, if it was, it would look something like this, and then it would look like that. So it really wouldn't matter if you had it drawn in or not. Definitely on the lower time frame there is. Here, there could be because this red candle is a long candle, right? And there could be demand located in long candles. So it would be something like that. Okay. Oh, Okay. Let's see. Uh, any chart, anytime. Yes, sir. I have tested this and it works. Jason. How come you're not with your mic? There you go, Jay. Are you busy? Oh, you're
Hey,
self-muted.
okay,
There you go,
okay.
Jason. Hey, what's going on, man?
I'm here, I'm always here.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. You know, if
Yeah,
there's one person that's put um, probably the most amount of time out of all the students studying charts, it'd probably be you. Okay. And so what we teach, right, is principles and concepts. And what we know is not the every situation can you apply the principle and concept. The principles and concepts are there to help you understand how the market works. So that when you come across a situation where you cannot apply the principle or the concept, literally, you know how to adjust it. So, in your own experience, what have you found?
because basically, we basically deal with a specific type of chart in terms of the forex pairs,
Yeah,
and I have even went so far as to test out these supply and demand principles on like the US 30 and some of the others like stocks, and
yeah,
you can see how things actually play off
hmm
exactly how it's supposed to play off based on the principles that we have learned. I didn't
yeah,
expect it. I didn't expect that. For me, before looking at these charts were like so far fetched. Um, you couldn't understand what was going on these charts, but
hmm
just simply drawing in the zones the way they're supposed to be have been drawn, you see the charts in a totally different light.
yeah,
And that has been my experience. That is why I could say, that is why I could say that what you teach, Yakev, is not bullshit, right?
hmm
I have tested because if this was like fake stuff, I would have known that it
hmm
was fake. I would definitely
yeah,
have known that it was fake because the only way you can know something is fake is that if you have been experiencing fake things and
yeah, yeah,
because as you learned before, how could you tell a fake $100 bill? You
right,
could only know a fake $100 bill if you have seen the real one,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
I
has
know.
been my experience, yeah.
Yeah, it's legit. I know.
Yeah,
Well, I know it's legit because I put in the time to figure it out. And when
exactly.
you see it over and over and over and over and over again,
Yes,
when there's consistency in what you can get out of, the results, if the results are consistent, then you know it's legit. If the results
correct.
aren't consistent, then it's not legit, right? You
Exactly.
apply the same you apply the same concept to, figuring out how life works, and it's the same thing. It's the same
hmm
thing. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kept simple as validating this trend line that we just spoke about.
Hmm.
If our rules weren't consistent, if our concepts weren't consistent, we would never have been able to determine that that trend line was invalid.
Exactly.
It's only because of that we could determine that.
Exactly.
Mm,
And so you remember what I told you? If you study the charts long enough, it will be, um, if you take a concept and you apply it to a random location on the chart, anywhere, you just pick anything, and if you apply a concept and it works and it makes complete sense on that chart,
yeah.
it's likely legitimate, but
Mhm.
you'd have to put enough time and effort studying charts to know when sometimes there's like little nuances to those,
Yeah.
to the trend line rules. But like when you apply it once and it's legit, like for instance, this last trend line that we drew, it was legit because of this here.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So just because of that, this trend line existed. And because of that, we got this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, sometimes people say, well, to test out a strategy, you got to back test it. Okay. Like I get people that come up to me and they're like, hey, do you back test your strategy? Like that's the most amateur way of thinking ever. It's basically, hey, I'm lazy. I don't like to put in work in anything, and I like to just kind of test things out, and I like to get a strategy, and I like to input some data into the computer and say, okay, now I'm going to press go, and it's going to go back in time and it's going to locate every single time price did this and that based on my strategy, and if I bought there, what would it do? And then the
Yeah.
results are shit, and they're like, oh, let me just tweak this one little thing. What if I bought it after it moved above RSI? Then what? Then the results are a little bit better, and you're like, okay, what if I bought like this, and then you tweak it, and then finally it's something good. You know what's so stupid about that? If you thought logically, if that person's brain could think logically, you'd say, all I did was I tweaked the variables for this specific chart and this section of time, and it
Exactly.
happened to give me this good result. They have
Yes.
no idea what the dynamic was on that currency pair during that specific portion of time. They have
Mm.
no clue. But
Yeah.
that strategy would have worked. But guess what? Guess how many different situations there are on a chart that
Oh
could
shit.
play out?
Thousands.
Thousands upon
Yeah.
thousands upon thousands. So, do you see why these strategies and back testing is
Correct.
garbage and it doesn't work?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's like saying, oh, you stop and you look at your life. You go back 5 years and you say, okay, let's think about my life over the last 5 years. Now, let me just tweak what I could have done. If I would have worked harder in this situation, or if I would have dealt with that situation differently, if I would have listened to what my mother told me, or if I would have been a better friend to that person, or if I would have bought that car, or if I didn't buy that house, you could tweak all that, and then it would have said, oh, this would have been your outcome. Okay, great. But moving forward and trying to apply the same tweaks to what you did in the last 5 years, it may not work the same way. It
Yeah.
will likely not work the same way. if
Mm-hmm.
if you don't understand the concepts and principles and the reasoning behind it, you'll never understand moving forward. It's like the whole
Yeah.
baking concept that I talked about. If you're just so stuck on the ingredients and the exact time that you have to cook things, that's great. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're tossed in a situation where they're like, okay, here's my kitchen. I've got some flour, but not as much as you need. I don't
Yeah.
have sugar, but what I do have is honey. My oven, it cooks hotter than normal, so you'll have to adjust the temperature. You throw those situations, that person won't even know how to cook or bake a cake,
Exactly.
because they
Yes.
won't understand the whole concept of how baking
Yeah.
works, how these ingredients work together. They won't understand those things because they've always been about the ingredients being exact and the recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And the world wants you to be trained to think that way.
Hmm.
Schools train you to think about recipes and baking instructions. Why? So that you don't grasp how things actually work. Because if you actually grasp how things work, then you can think logically about things and you could be a very successful human being.
Yeah, yeah.
You could do very well in anything in life. But,
Hmm.
it's like what I was sharing with you the other day about how they were teaching my daughter to read.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Sight words about memory. Hello, you're trying to teach my daughter to remember the exact ingredients of how to bake a cake. I'm not trying to teach her the exact ingredients. I'm trying to teach
Mhm.
her how to read, how
Correct.
to look at a word and break it down, and how to sound it out. Why? Because then if I tossed her a word that's 20 letters long, guess what? She can apply the same
Yeah,
concept and principles and read that 20-letter word. But you toss that same 20-letter word to the kid that's just been, learning sight words, they won't have a clue. Why? Because that 20-letter word they've never been given before.
correct.
Okay?
I have lived that. I have lived that, Kev.
Yes, sir. Me too.
I was
Me
taught
too.
that way, and then my nieces were taught the phonics way, and you wouldn't believe the way they read when
Yeah.
at an early stage they could figure out words without even an adult telling them this word.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you may ask yourself, but why would they do that? Why would the school system want to do that? Does
hmm.
it not work against humanity the way humanity is supposed to progress forward? Yes, it is. So let me give you a perfect example. Because when I tell you that you can apply these concepts and principles to anything in the world and you will extract the truth, let me give you a perfect example. Okay? Perfect
Yeah,
example. Listen to this. I know we're going off topic, but all these things are always important.
yeah,
So, and the thing is, when you're always in line with logical thinking, critical thinking, and trying to discover things and trying to learn new things, guess what? The universe will always deliver more evidence to you, always, because you're in line with that, because you're looking for it. You exude that. The universe will constantly provide you more evidence, and then you'll have a voice in your head that'll say, "See, there you go. There's your proof." So going back to this concept, right? Where society wants to teach you and make you memorize, right? When you
yeah,
go to school, what happens? Here's a book, read it, remember it. Here's a test, you know, A, B, C, or D. Which sentence do you remember reading in the textbook? Was it this sentence? Was it this sentence or this sentence? And you're like, I remember reading this sentence. So just circle that circle and then you got it right. Okay? That's what school teaches you.
hmm.
Not logically, not critically. Okay? It's memorization. Okay. Why do they want to teach you memorization? It's like the thing about the word. So in school, they will teach kids to learn the words by looking at the words. Oh, this word looks like this, so it's the. This word looks like this, so it's cat. Okay. Why? What's the problem with that? Is because you can give a child a word that they've been taught to remember and they'll say it. But then if you bring them another word that incorporates the same letters from the other word, they will not be able to determine that it's the same thing, but just maybe a little bit different. Why? Because you didn't teach them how to logically break down that word to understand what the word is and how they form it into an actual word. How does
Yeah,
the sound come out of their mouth to form that word? Okay, so why would you want to train people like that? Why would you want to do that? Well, because you know how they say if you don't understand history, you'll be doomed to repeat it?
yeah.
Okay, so if something works for somebody, if a used car salesman always uses the same techniques to sell a lemon, to sell a car that is garbage to an unsuspecting person, they use the same techniques. If the technique works, why would they change it? They wouldn't change it. Why does it work? Because you could use the same technique, but just cover it differently, make it look
Hmm.
different.
Hmm.
And so if it looks different, like that word, if you're so used to the salesman coming out and saying, "Hey, look at these tires," and he kicks it, you're like, "Hey, hey, 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 you can't get me on that one. I saw that in the movie the other day." I know what you're trying to do. That's not going to work on me. But then he goes into another gear and he starts talking about some other stuff. He can lure you off track. He's using the same technique, but he's luring you off track. So the concept is people who want to use manipulation to trick you, they're going to use the same techniques, but they're going to make it look different. There's only so many different ways you can trick somebody in the markets. Okay? You know that. Price comes
Yeah.
down to a trend line, they force people to buy when it actually goes lower. There's only so many different chart patterns they can create on the chart, but they have to keep on luring people into being tricked by it. So the thing is, you have to make it look different, a little bit different each time,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yes.
that you
Yes. Yes.
don't use logic and reasoning to determine that you're constantly being lured into a trap. Okay? So just the other day, these doctors came out and they did this talk on in I think it was in front of the Supreme Court in the states. Okay, these doctors came out before talking about this whole COVID thing, and they said something really important. Okay, so this is what I'm telling you about: how you can apply the concepts and principles to anything, and you will always get the truth. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get back to what I was talking about. Why? Why would they want to teach you to remember something, but not to think logically or critically about how to determine what that word actually says? Why would they not teach you that? Okay. Well, we had SARS and we had swine flu that came out, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, to suit the purpose and the needs of those people that would benefit from that pandemic, the World Health Organization came out and they said one thing about the swine flu. The CDC came out and they said one thing. Their stance on lockdowns was completely different than what it is today. Their
Mm-hmm.
stance on masks was completely different than what it is today. And they had reasons for it, and it was scientific, and it was studied, and it was researched, and they had it all figured out. And then we have this problem. And anybody with a brain would say, hmm, that's funny. When you actually look at the studies, there was a lot of people that died of swine flu and SARS and stuff. You know, what did they say back then? How come we didn't have a lockdown then? What were
Mm-hmm.
those scientists saying then? What did the World Health Organization say about that before? And if you look into it, you'll see that what they were saying was different than what they're saying now. So the logic and reasoning doesn't match.
Hmm.
If the logic and reasoning doesn't match, what does that equal, Jason?
Fake
Exactly.
manipulation. Yeah.
So guess what? Guess what these doctors were saying when they came out? They said, you can look at it for yourself, but we've already been able to determine what is going on right now are the big media sites. They're going back and they're deleting the articles that they wrote during the
Yeah.
SARS pandemic and during the swine flu pandemic, because the arguments and articles that they wrote about what the CDC was saying, about what Fauci was saying, about what all these so-called experts were saying,
Yeah.
all their arguments to support why there wasn't lockdowns, why there wasn't masks, why there wasn't this and that and this and that, their arguments are different now.
Sure.
So instead of people going and researching and finding it and thinking critically and logically and saying, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you say that then? But now you're saying
Mm-hmm.
something different. So now all the big media companies, they're going back and they're erasing all those articles.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. But do you see how, why any human being would not be able to see the difference between what happened then and what happened now? And instead, you'd say, oh, this is a different situation. I wasn't taught this. Just like cat and mat. Okay? If you teach your kid how to read cat using their head and their brain the way it's supposed to, what sound does C make? What sound does A make? What sound does T make? Put it all together. Cat. All right. Now
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you another word. It's mat. It's the same thing. I just changed the first letter. Use the same logic and you'll say mat. Okay. But
Yes.
if you taught somebody the sight word for cat, you'd say, this is what cat looks like. And you'd say, okay, that's cat. Now I showed you mat 10 years later, 15 years later, and you're like, I don't know. I wasn't taught this one. And they're like, that's right. We didn't teach you it. So now we're going to teach you it. We're even if it's based on completely different rules. then when we taught you the word cat, you're not going to question it because you never were taught to even know how to break down this word to begin with. So you're just going to
Yeah.
accept the answer that we give you now because you've never known any different.
That's
You
yeah, that
understand?
is yeah,
You
that
see
is
how this
yeah,
works?
yeah.
You see how this works? Oh,
Hmm.
there's a new pandemic. Yeah, don't worry about what happened last time. This is a completely different
Yeah.
situation.
Complete.
We're going to give you the explanation for what's going
Yes,
on.
yes, yes.
So, how do I know it's true? You apply the same concepts and principles to anything in the world, just like you could apply these concepts to any chart, any currency pair, any time frame, and you'll extract the truth. Use these concepts and principles for anything in the world, and you can extract the reality from it. And
Hmm.
the proof is in the pudding. If you can consistently apply it and consistently see the results, then it's true. If you can't get consistent results, then it's not true.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right.
Hmm.